that your seat gets a little more connected and grounded to the chair that you're sitting in. And then you might even feel the top of your head lift up just a bit, and maybe your chin draws in slightly, and then purposefully place your hands someplace. So either on your lap, on a table, on your belly, maybe one hand to your heart, one hand to your belly, but purposefully choose to place your palms onto something. And then your eyes can close if they like, or you can just focus them on one point that's not the screen. So just let my voice kind of guide you. And then just right here in this very space, imagine that you're kind of just floating somewhere in outer space, hovering above the planet Earth. And if that feels a little too heady or abstract for you, you might consider picturing a star or a planet, and just kind of imagine that you're just, floating, hovering, tethered to a star, a planet, or hovering even just enough above planet Earth that you can look down and see it. And you might just feel your feet on the floor so that you know that even though you're floating and kind of abstract, you're still tethered and connected to something solid. And just take a long breath in and out through your nose. And then imagine or visualize or sense that you're slowly lowering, descending gently a little bit closer to the earth, close enough so that you have a bird's eye view of the city that you live in. And just pause there for a moment, hover there, still knowing that you're tethered securely to your home base, but you have some space to float in your upper body. And take another breath in and out. And then visualize or imagine or sense that you're dropping down in a little more grounded so that you're hovering literally above the roof of the dwelling that you're seated in right now. Whether it's your home or a library, or might even be sitting in your car, but just close enough that you're hovering, visualizing bird's eye view, the roof of the dwelling that you're seated within. Take another long breath in and out. That feels useful to you. And then still noticing your feet on the floor, knowing that you're tethered and connected securely to the ground. Just visualize yourself hovering right over your own body, and so that you can see the shape of your body, you can notice the posture of your body, the clothing that you're wearing. Take another breath in and out. And as you're ready, gently just imagining or sensing that your awareness is dropping now back down into your physical shape. You might feel even or notice a settling, a softening, a grounding. Just feeling your bottom on your chair, your feet on the floor. Take another deep breath in and out. And then if your eyes were closed, as you're ready, blink them open. Look around your space, just reorient back into present time. And just kind of check in, notice how you're feeling. Notice how you're feeling. So we are talking all about energizing and connecting this evening. So we've walked our way through finding some focus, some balance, settling in a little bit deeper, finding some calm and letting go. And so tonight we're focusing on this idea of energizing and also connecting. So even though this series was really geared for you as the adult, we also want to make sure that these tools feel applicable to your family and your home. And so we wanted to spend a little bit of time focused on ways to use these tools directly to connect with your children or your family members. So we're going to start with just some insights. And I realized that I didn't pull up my PDF. So I'm going to give you the first insight. And as you're kind of pondering, I'm going to pull that up for you so you can see it if you don't have a copy printed out. But so our first insight tonight is just thinking about current habits, tools, or rituals that your children use to de-stress, whether they're 3 or 12 or maybe even 33, if they still live at home with you. What are current habits, tools, or rituals that your children or nieces or nephews or grandchildren use to de-stress? And these might be conscious or unconscious, right? They might know that they're doing these or they might not know. So just current habits that your children use to de-stress. And while you sit with that for a moment, I'm going to just pull up the document so that I can share it with you. There we go. And that is not what I wanted to do. Okay. Technology is not going to really work with me tonight. So here we go. So just noticing what are those habits or tools, and then thinking about, are those helpful or not helpful? Again, and this isn't with judgment or even attachment to the helpfulness or the unhelpfulness. It's just for that self-awareness piece to notice and to find a deeper connection to what's happening in your home when there is stress, right? So are these tools or rituals helpful or not helpful? And then the next kind of insight to think about or sit with for a moment is just imagining when you might integrate mindful rituals into your daily routine. And we've kind of talked about this throughout, but really thinking about spaces or seasons or times during your day where you have the opportunity realistically to integrate mindful rituals or habits or routines into your day. I'm just going to offer you a moment to sit with that. And we'll send this PDF out to you afterwards, so you can always come back to this if you're, not able to get through everything this evening. And then you're welcome to keep writing, keep thinking, but I'm going to scroll to the next one. And this is really where we start to use the awareness and plug it in to start to shift habits and shift how we're resonating with each other in our homes. So I wanted to ask you just to sit with this idea this evening about when you feel most connected to your children or your family, the people in your home. There are certainly different seasons of the day, hours of the day, or even activities that we feel more connected or less connected. So for you, when do you feel or notice that you have more connection to your children or the little ones living in your home, the big ones living in your home? Just sit with that for a moment. And obviously that can vary from day to day, but generally. And then our next insight this evening is reflecting on that sluggish time of the day for you as the adult, the caretaker. For you, when is your most sluggish time of day? And again, obviously that varies day to day, but in general, is there a time or a season of your day or evening that you feel most sluggish, tired, lethargic, irritable? And then taking that a step further, reflecting on what are your kids' most sluggish or irritable times of the day. And obviously, if you have more than one child in your home, that might not match up, right? So each child might be different. One child might be like really like, oh my gosh, this after school time is a really difficult time for this child. And another child might kind of ebb and flow more smoothly. So, but just thinking, reflecting, noticing what comes up for you about your children's or little people's most sluggish or irritable time of the day. And then noticing if those two things match or if they're completely separate. Like if your sluggish time of the day is, that like hour after dinner but before bedtime. I know, like, so in my household from 7 to 8 I kind of start crashing, and my daughter, who's 3.5, it's like her wild hour. And then like at 8:30 she crashes and she goes to sleep. So that is a really chaotic time in my body, because we don't match. Our energy states do not match, and it's a pretty general pattern. So reflecting on that for your household. And then our last for now is thinking about your most energized time of the day. Typically for you as the caretaker, when are you most alive, energized, clear, and connected to yourself and to the people in your home? Reflecting on that for a moment, and then also flipping that to noticing when are those hyper, or maybe not hyper because that tends to get a bad rap, but just energetic, playful times of the day for your children. And it could be hyper, or it could just be really energized and playful, excited. And then again, reflecting on where those two states line up. Are those patterns lining up? Or is there a huge rift in where your energy matches the energy of the little ones in your home? And then in our little bubble here, just some space for you to kind of keep this ongoing toolkit. You'll see this in all 3 of the sessions in the PDFs. Just noticing or writing down current practices or habits that leave you feeling energized or connected. Are there things that you're doing currently, you as the caregiver, that do energize you or let you feel more connected to the people in your home that you live with? And so if there are any things that you're already practicing, you might just go ahead and jot that down. Sometimes it's helpful to see that written out in a visual, concrete list. And then, I would invite, if anyone wants to share, I know we can't speak and see each other, but I certainly am happy to share out if anyone has any thoughts on current practices that they use that they want to share out, or any just insights from those few reflections that you think maybe would resonate with some other people in the webinar. Okay, and you can type anything in at any time. I'll kind of just keep checking the chat box. So what I really wanted to focus on this evening before we get into our practices was taking a few moments to talk about energy. And so I really am talking here scientifically. So when we say that word energy, sometimes, especially when it's associated with yoga or mindfulness, we think about this like woo-woo, like hippy-dippy, like energy, like auras and things like that, right? So when I say the word energy, I'm talking science energy. So the chemical, the neuronal, the synapses that fire, the responses that happen in our literal nervous systems that help us feel connected to other people, to ourselves and to other people, right? So So when I say energy, that's really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the ways that our bodies sense and mirror each other through the physiological processes that happen in our bodies when we are either stressed or when we're calm. And so one of the things that we know, so if you recall, over the past 2 weeks, we've talked about the nervous system. And if you recall those two branches of the nervous system, there's the gas pedal that's like rev up, rev up, rev up, right? That sympathetic nervous system that prepares us to deal with stress. It's part of our survival system. And then there's the gas pedal. Sorry, the brake pedal, right? So the brake pedal is like, bring it back down. That's the parasympathetic, if you remember, and that's the part of our nervous system that prepares us to rest and restore, right? So that system is always operating within that window of tolerance, right? That space that we talked about where we have an adaptable, flexible nervous system so that we can respond to triggers and then settle. We can respond to triggers and settle. And that's really resilience, is having a nervous system that is adaptable enough to meet the needs of daily stressors. And so one of the things that we know about our nervous system is that there is a nerve in our body. It's a cranial nerve that is deeply embedded into almost every major organ system in our body. And it's also very deeply connected to that brake pedal, the parasympathetic nervous system. So you may have heard of the vagus nerve or the vagal nerve. It's also called the wandering nerve. Checking the chat, I thought I saw something pop up. So it's also called the wandering nerve. And so it sits right here at the base of our skull, and it wanders all the way down, touching the heart, the lungs, the stomach, all the way down into the base of the gut. The longest cranial nerve, the longest nerve in the body. And we know that it very much helps determine how settled or unsettled we feel. And so one of the things I really wanted to talk about tonight was how important that vagal nerve is in our ability to connect and settle with other people. So not only is that vagal nerve determining how settled we feel as individuals. So we're unconsciously always receiving feedback from our environment, right? We're unconsciously always surveying on a visceral level. Is this a safe place? Am I comfortable here? Or is this not a place where I feel comfortable? So we've all had that feeling when we walk into some place and we kind of get that like tingle in the back of our neck, or we notice our stomach starts to turn. Like there's that sixth sense that's like telling us, not through words, but through sensation, that something isn't quite right. That is your vagal nerve talking to you. And again, it's an unconscious, lightning fast response, and it's happening 100 times a day. And so when we are feeling connected and settled, our vagal nerve is said to be like toned, like it's toned, it's settled, and it's telling our bodies that we are safe. And therefore, when we feel settled and safe, we have the capacity relationally to connect with other people. And it's almost like a no-brainer when you think about when you're stressed, when you're in that anxious place, when there's chronic stressors happening, as there have been for the past 6 months for many of us, all of us dealing with COVID-19, when you're scared, when you've had a trauma, think about how we relate to other people. Even if we just have a bad morning, if we don't get our coffee in the morning, right? Like we're snappy, we're irritable. We don't necessarily take the time to stop and listen or notice how someone else might feel. You can see the same thing with your little ones and your older ones, right? When they're cranky, when they're not settled, they are less able to hear us.
Megan, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what happened. My screen just went blank.
Oh, no, you're still here.
Oh, I don't
Sorry,
know. I
guys.
can't see anything. Like
You're still here.
my screen is totally blank.
You scared me for a second.
Yeah, I, I got scared too. It's like my computer died. So you can see me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I cannot see anything but a completely blank screen. So, oh, there we are.
Okay.
I don't know what happened. I'm so sorry about that. Nothing changed. Okay, so let's just keep going. So right now, my vagal nerve was just telling me like something's not right. So my system got activated, right? But hopefully because I have some yoga and some mindfulness skills, I'm able to, right now I'm pushing my feet on the floor. I'm gonna take a deep breath and let myself start to settle back in. Okay, so I believe I was saying, right? So when we can see that in our kids too, we know that when they're irritable and they're anxious and stressed, like they're not able to resonate with us. They're not able to hear what we're saying. We have to raise our voices. We see that and we know that, right? Because it happens in daily life. And so one of the cool things about our vagal nerve is that not only does it give us information about what we deem safe or unsafe, not only does it give us feedback sensorily, so it's a very visceral sensory nerve. So there aren't words there. It's senses, it's sensations, it's feelings, it's urges, impulses. So not only does it give us senses and information about how we feel, but it's also what helps us feel a sense of belonging and connection to other people. And so again, when I talk about energy and how the energy in our home and in our family and in our groups can shift together, that's what I'm talking about. That's our vagal nerve. And when our nervous system is unsettled, right? So again, back to our nervous system, if our gas pedal is revving our systems up, we are anxious, we are unsettled, that translates to the other bodies in our home. And that has the capacity to then shift those bodies into feeling unsettled, right? But it also works the reverse way. If we bring that brake pedal on, we can settle ourselves. If our nervous systems are settled, it has the reverse action. So if we're a settled body, we can offer that, that settledness to the other bodies in the room. And I know that everyone, all of us have felt that. If you've ever been in a large crowd, right? Think about being in a large crowd, maybe at a concert or church or a yoga class even, where there are lots of settled bodies together. We have all felt that sense of connectedness, right? Of almost hopefulness. We've also probably all felt the opposite when there have been a large gathering of bodies that are unsettled. We can feel that viscerally in our bodies, right? And so I wanted to talk about and touch on this tonight because many of the practices that we will be engaging in are practices that science has shown directly affects and tones that vagal nerve. So things like using your voice, like the humming breath that we did 2 weeks ago, moving your head and neck, sitting up nice and tall, your posture. And I'll walk you through some of these things as we get into the practices. But we know from studies that those practices directly affect the vagal nerve. And that vagal nerve is directly affected to that settling part of our body. And so not only are we settled, but we're able to affect and settle in relationship to the people in our home, to our children. And one of the cool things that I always like to point out is, again, when we are unsettled, when we're operating outside of that window of tolerance, so when we are anxious and like hyper aroused, or when we're down, and that like hypo arousal, that depression, that sadness, that really lethargic space, we are, again, physiologically, we're less able to access relational capacity. And what I mean by that is we actually have less ability to hear differences, variances in human tone of voice. We actually have less physical capacity to read facial expressions and the nuances of facial expression. We have less capacity to have empathy, to notice how the other person might be feeling. So that vagal tone is directly affecting how we're able to connect to and relate to other people. And it's really interesting when you think about COVID-19, twofold. So not only are we literally physically distanced from other people, I mean, not usually the people in our home, but the other people in our circles, so we're physically distanced from them. But even when we are in the same space, often we have a mask on, right? And so if you think about the nuances of facial expression and how we use that to relate to one another, we are at a really kind of disadvantage, right, in these times to be able to relate to people. Layered on top of that, that most of us have a little bit more gas pedal in our systems happening due to all of the stressors. And so when you layer those things on top of each other, it's like a perfect storm for feeling really anxious, feeling really chronically stressed, and also feeling disruptions in our relationships, feeling disruptions in our partnerships. And so I'm so grateful that we have science and we have these practices that feed us some of that settling, feed us some of that medicine that we can come back into relationship with ourselves and come back into relationship with the people that we love. So that being said, I'm just going to check the chat really quick. If anyone has any questions on any of that, feel free to pop a question in the chat box. I am going to include some references and resources for you. So when you get that email after the fact, as long as you're registered, you'll get some of that information so that you can do some further reading or searching on your own if you're interested in that piece of it. All right. So we will go through some practices the same as we've done the other 2 nights. I'll kind of guide you through a few things, and then we'll stop and kind of go back and just walk you through the specifics, and then I'll guide you through a few more practices so that you can really kind of drop into some of the embodied practices, and then I'll walk back through and answer any questions or just kind of walk through the steps. Okay, I'm a little bit afraid to share my screen again. I don't want to lose you again. All right. So we are going to start with some breathing practices. And so we will focus on 2 particular breaths tonight. And so all of these practices are rather energizing. So the other thing, that we didn't talk about or that I didn't mention is, again, that window of tolerance. Many times when we think about stress and trauma and anxiety, we think about that hyper arousal, right? And as you could see from last week on some of those trauma-related symptoms, a lot of times that does look like irritability, anger, hypervigilance, frustration, a lot of those kind of like up behaviors. But we also a lot of times forget that also can be the other side of it: sluggish, tired, depressed, sad, no motivation, just lethargy, apathy. And so the practices that we're focused on tonight are a little bit more apt to bring in some life, some energy into the body. And obviously, not every practice is going to affect every person the same way. So this is a general statement. And so you'll see how they make you feel tonight when we go through them. So these 2 breaths are fairly energizing. And the difference is that we're really focused on the in-breath. If you recall, when we focus on the exhale, we're really dialing into that parasympathetic system, that brake pedal. So when we focus on the inhale, we're actually activating our sympathetic system. So we're activating and giving ourselves a little bit of boost. So that's why they feel a little more energizing. So bunny breath is what we'll start with. And so I'll just invite you again to bring your feet to the floor. Sit up nice and tall in your seat. And maybe just take a couple rolls of the shoulders, either direction. And if you have a stuffy nose, this one might be a little tricky for you, so you might just follow along or imagine, because you do have to kind of breathe through your nose for this one. All right, and so what bunny breath is, if you picture like a little bunny sniffing in through his nose, it's 3 quick sniffs in through the nose, and then slow breath out through the nose. And so we'll just do about 4 rounds of that together. All right, so go ahead and take a nice tall seat. And let your eyes just focus on one point on the screen or someplace in your room. And go ahead and 3 quick breaths in through the nose. Long breath out through the nose. Again, when you're ready, out through the nose. Again, out through the nose. Again, out through the nose. And last time, out through the nose. And then just sit with that for a moment. Notice how that feels. Okay. And so what I'll say about that one too is it can be useful for energizing someone if you work through the lens of kind of meeting someone where they are. This type of breath could potentially also be helpful for someone with anxiety, right? So if you think about someone who's anxious and up and breathing in their chest and breathing rapidly, sometimes it can be difficult, like telling someone to calm down, right? Just calm down. Like that typically doesn't work. So asking someone who's super anxious to take deep breaths can sometimes be counterproductive. And so a bunny breath would be an option for you to really just meet them in that energetic space that they're in, right? And then after a couple rounds of that, so again, I'm thinking of my daughter during her wild hour at night. And then after a few rounds, you can kind of start to pace and slow it down and slow it down and slow it down until you're able to just drop down into those maybe deeper breaths, starting to balance the breath and then focus on the exhale, if that makes sense. All right, and so then we'll do breath of joy. So I'm going to invite you to stand up for this one. You do need a little bit of space, so I'm going to step back a bit. If you're not standing up, you certainly can do this in a chair. And actually, I'm going to sit back down for just a moment and kind of walk you through it if you're sitting, and then we'll stand up and do it. So what breath of joy is again, it's 3 long breaths in through the nose and then a long exhale through an open mouth. And there's body movements that are paired with it. So again, it's nice and energizing, kind of clearing out to the body. And so the movements go like this. If you just take your fingers in front of you like a conductor, so the movements with the body will go up, out, and then up, and then down. And so just try that a few times. So it's like up, out, up, and then the big breath out, the arms are coming down. And so you could do it that way in your chair, and it's just a right? If you're standing, I'm going to go ahead and stand up now. So if you want to join me, you can stand, or you can keep doing it that way in your chair. And we'll do this 3 times. And so the standing version is using your whole arm. So it's an in breath, and your feet can step a few inches apart. An in breath, an in breath, and then that out breath is you're dropping forward and just letting your arms go right between your legs so the head drops down. So it's much more large body movement. If you have high blood pressure, if you're pregnant, if you just tend towards getting dizzy easily, I would just do this one sitting down. And you can still even use full arm movements, but when we exhale, you would just, sometimes the dropping the head down a few times in a row can make some people dizzy, especially if you have high blood pressure or if you're pregnant. So that's my disclaimer for that one. So either sitting in your chair or standing up. Let's go through breath of joy 3 times. So we're just going to take a breath in and out to get ready. And then we're going to breathe in, out, in, out, in, out. And then you can just kind of dangle forward on that last one. If you're sitting in your chair, you can just kind of sit nice and tall with your arms at your sides. So taking a moment, just nice and easy. There's no rush. When you are ready, what you would do is just start to straighten your legs and roll yourself all the way back up to standing. Okay? So that is breath of joy. And so I would just again invite you to kind of notice how you're feeling in this moment. You can hopefully feel a pretty big difference from some of the breaths that we had practiced in the other 2 weeks and how that affects how you're feeling. And so then just taking a moment to think about, for you, where could you imagine incorporating either of those breaths into your day, or who might you share them with? So either for yourself or for someone in your home. Practically, as part of your toolkit, where could you imagine trying those breaths? So then if you look over here to the right of my screen, you'll see 2 physical yoga poses. And so these are both movements, obviously, again, that bring in a little bit more energy, strength into the body, and might kind of liven the system. So again, you can see the picture of the boy on the screen is standing in star power. And so I think what we'll do is I think I'll actually lead you through, I'm going to lead you through star power and then the mindfulness practices. And so a crescent lunge is literally when you just think of a lunge, right? I'm going to sit my screen down a bit. And so if you just think about a lunge, right? Just like a runner's lunge. But why crescent lunge is great for energizing, and you would do both sides, right? And so why a lunge is energizing to our system is because it's using those really large muscles of the quadriceps. And so we're really engaging the biggest muscle group in the body, which brings in a lot of heat and a lot of energy into the body. So especially if you have, you know, really active kids who are really athletic or not necessarily athletic, but who like to get really active, crescent lunge can be a great offering to them, or again, to yourself, because it does tap into those really large muscle groups. You can hear I'm out of breath from just showing you, right? So I think what we'll do is I'm going to walk us through the star pose and then a couple of the mindfulness practices, and then I'll come back and just kind of break them down, answer any questions, and then we'll end again with a practice kind of just for you this evening. So what I would invite you to do is to stand up. Again, if you're not able to stand up, you can certainly follow along and do these in your chair. All right. So as you can see from that picture, star power is creating a big star with your body. And so just take a moment to really feel your feet on the ground. Maybe lift your heels and then drop your heels, lift your toes and then lower your toes. Really stretch your arms out in either direction and then lift the very crown of your head towards the sky. Lift your heart, lift your eyes so your gaze draws up. And just take a few breaths right here. Notice how standing in this shape affects how you feel. And you could stay here for 5 to 10 breaths. A couple of options. You could inhale, take the arms up. Exhale the arms back down. Inhale the arms up. Exhale the arms down. Twist side to side. So similar to our floating twist, but keeping those arms really nice and active and straight and strong. And coming back to center, go ahead and let your arms drop, let them rest for a moment. And while our arms are dropping and resting, I want to invite you to visualize or imagine someone that you live with standing or sitting behind you. And so that your backs are coming right next to one another. And we're going to take that star shape again. And so you're standing here in the star shape and imagining that someone that you live with is standing in this same shape with their back up against your back. And so as you stand, you're going to gently imagine that you're pressing your back towards them and they're pressing their back towards you. And inviting yourself and that person just to take a few breaths together. So this is that connection piece. So not only are you modeling these practices, but you're actually engaging in the practices together. And then you might raise your arms up as you breathe in and see if your arms can reach up at the same pace, the same speed. And then as you breathe out, let your arms float back down to shoulder height, same pace, same speed. And then one more time, inhaling, reaching up, and exhaling, dropping down. Go ahead and let your arms fall down. Walk your feet in a little closer. And then just take your fingertips on one hand, bring it to the center of your chest. And we're just going to tap on our chest as if we were a gorilla pounding our chest. And you're just going to tap up and down the sternum. And you may have introduced this the first week even. And so just this gentle tapping along the line of your sternum can feel energizing. And then you could let your hands come back down. Take your shoulders and shrug them up. Take a long breath in. Let your shoulders drop and take a long breath out. Squeeze your hands tight. Take a breath in. And open your hands. Take a breath out. And as you walk your way back to sitting down, or if you're already sitting, just kind of taking a minute to check in and really notice what you sense, how you feel after engaging in those practices. And again, there's no wrong answer. You might feel really sleepy. That's okay too, right? It's just for you to notice. And so as we walk our way down this PDF here, you can see the Tarzan tap is what we just did, or the thymus tap. Back breathing. So we started to practice that. So in that star power, there's so many things that you can do from that space. We practiced breathing in partnership with someone back to back. Another idea, and then I'll come back to the back-to-back breathing. I realize I jumped there, but I wanted to just offer you another idea for the star power, is that you can invite in affirmations. And so that star power is a really great place to invite in an affirmation like, I am strong, I am powerful, I am abundant, I am grateful, I'm amazing. Whatever words resonate with you or with your children. But those affirmations can then just be another layer that you're adding into the practices, especially for kids who might just get really bored standing there, right? Sometimes anchoring in with that next layer can be useful. So I wanted to make sure that I shared that with you. And then so coming back to the back-to-back breathing. So in this space, really what I'm referring to is just sitting back to back with someone that you love. And so if you can imagine sitting in a chair, sitting crisscross on the ground, this is a really great one to do. It can be a great one to do before bedtime, but it can also be a great thing to do at any time of the day, especially in those places, reflecting back to our initial kind of insights. thinking about those places in the day where the energy is not matching up, right? So if you have one person who's really kind of in that red or orange or yellow space where they're a little bit outside of their window of tolerance, and then you have someone else who's kind of in that gray space where they're kind of outside of their window in the opposite direction, or just feeling irritable or sleepy. Back-to-back breathing can be a nice way to start to resonate and settle both sides so that your nervous systems can start to tone and regulate and resonate to one another. And so there's a settling, but there's also a connecting. And so back-to-back breathing, like I said, you can sit on the floor, you can sit in a chair. If you have really young children, you could even kind of just set them in, you could like put them on your lap. And so if they don't want to sit back to back with you, you could just snuggle them in your lap and kind of wrap your arms around them, or you could turn them towards you. Again, if you have like toddlers or babies, so that you're more belly to belly with little kids. But really the purpose and the intention is just that you're sitting. You would find a nice tall spine, and you would just take those belly breaths, those balloon breaths that we practiced that first week, just in and out through the nose, in and out through the nose. And you could breathe anywhere from, 3 to 10 breaths. You can let the child kind of be the leader. You could let yourself be the leader. And even sitting on the ground or in chairs, you could still incorporate the arms. You could do little movements side to side and see if you can kind of stay linked up, synced up, right? So there's lots of things that you can do that kind of work with, your particular needs. And then, so the other practice that I have here is more of a cognitive practice. And it's just in this moment, I appreciate. And so we know, again, from neuroscience and research studies of imaging on people's brains, that the practice of gratitude has a really powerful effect, not only in settling our nervous systems. And the reason for that is because it brings us to the present moment, right? When we're focused on the present moment, it's almost impossible at the same time to shift into the past or to shift into the future, right? I mean, it'll happen a moment later, right? So sometimes those moments are literally a moment, but in that magic moment, it brings us into settling because it's bringing our awareness to what's happening right now. And so gratitude not only has a direct impact on our own settling, but we also know that gratitude affects empathy, kindness, social reciprocity. So the parts of our brain in imaging, it's really cool. There's the parts of our brain that are involved in like social reciprocity and having empathy light up when people engage in gratitude practices. So gratitude sometimes gets, again, kind of like the energy piece. It gets like this unicorny, rainbowy wrap, but there's scientific evidence that backs up the fact that it really does have a powerful effect on how we feel and how we show up in our day. So in this moment, I appreciate is literally just that, saying that sentence out loud to yourself, or having the people in your home, your children, repeat that sentence out loud to each other. And so I would invite you just in this moment, not to share it out loud, but to write down in this moment. And so just, take a moment to connect in with yourself. Maybe repeat that phrase in your mind. But in this particular moment, on this day, in this season, I appreciate. Okay. So I'm going to stop my share. And if anyone has any questions about any of those practices, please feel free to shoot out a question in the chat box, or you can always email after the fact, okay? So for these last few minutes, I wanted again just to walk you through a practice just for you this evening. We went through the tools, kind of walked through those, but we didn't really sink in because I was kind of explaining them at the same time. So for you, for right now, I would just invite you to kind of sit up nice and tall in your chair one last time. Put your feet on the floor if they happen to reach. And then bring your fingertips to your elbows. Fingertips to elbows. And we're just going to start by circling the elbows around in one direction if that's accessible to you. If that's not quite accessible, you can always take a wider, just a wider base and circle the elbows that way. Make sure you go both directions. And then come back through center, but leave your elbows lifted. Sit nice and tall. Lift your heart, lift your gaze. Notice how that might shift how you feel, even just that little shift. And then from here, we're just going to twist one side to the other. Let your head come along with your torso. If you find that makes you dizzy, just keep looking straight ahead. You can move briskly. If you'd rather move a little slower, you can move a little slower. We're just twisting side to side. Maybe 2 or so more in each direction. As you are ready, just coming back to center, let your hands drop in your lap. Sit up nice and tall. Take a long breath in. And a long breath out through your mouth if you're comfortable. Good. Stretch your arms up to the ceiling. Grab onto your left wrist with your right hand. I'm going to scoot back a little so you can see. And we're just going to take a lean over to the right side. Your elbows can bend if that feels more useful, or you can straighten out the arms and really turn your chest up towards your ceiling. And then release that. Grab your right wrist with your left hand. Find some space in your spine and then take it in the other direction. And you can bend the elbows or you can straighten them out and open your heart towards the ceiling. And when you're ready, let that go. Let your arms drop down so that you're holding on to the sides of your chair. You could also hold on to the bottom of your chair on either side of your body. If you're not sitting in a chair, you're just going to interlace your fingers behind your back. So in either of those scenarios, what we're doing is moving our torso forward, pulling our ribs forward and straightening our arms behind us. Letting our sternum, our chin, our forehead all draw forward. If this hurts your lower back in any way, you're just going to not lean forward quite so much, right? You're going to lessen that arch in the back, but otherwise leaning forward, let your shoulders drop. Let your collarbones really settle on both sides of your body. And just 2 or 3 more breaths right here. Letting your shoulder blades squeeze towards each other. And when you're ready, just gently let that go. Bring your hands back to your lap. You're going to roll just one shoulder, both directions. When you're ready, the other shoulder, both directions. And then sitting up nice and tall, take your arms out like a cactus one more time. We're going to turn to the right. Take a long breath in. And then as you breathe out, turn back to center. Lifting up, up, up. Imagine that you're lifting up and out of your kidneys, out of your hips. Take a breath in, turn to the left. And as you're ready to breathe out, turn back to center. Do that 2 more times. Breathing in to the right, out to center. Inhale to the left, out to center. One more time to the right, breathing in. And breathing out back to center. And last time, breathing into the left. And breathing out to center. Interlace your fingers, press the inside of your palms towards your screen, drop your chin and round your back as if you're pressing your back towards the wall behind you. And then inhale your arms up, up, up. And as you exhale, drop your fingertips to the top of your head. And you're just gonna tap. So again, depending on your hair and kind of what you've got going on today, you're gonna just tap as well as you can from the top of your head to the center, all the way down to the back of the head. Tapping all the way back to the top, back to the bottom. And then let your hands, the heels of your hands, or you can drop down to the outside of your pinkies, whichever feels better for you. Either the heel of your hands or the outer edge of your pinkies, but you're gonna let your hands rest right at that ridge at the base of the skull on either side of the neck. I like to kind of just wrap my hands around and let my elbows drop down. If that doesn't feel great, you can use the heels of your hands or even a thumb. But really what we're trying to do is connect to the place where our vagal nerve intersects with the muscles of our neck. And so just this practice of putting a little bit of pressure on the ridge, the back of the head, can start to tone and calm and quiet our vagal nerve. Right? So all of the nerves that are intersecting from the base of the skull down to the sides of either neck on their way towards the lungs. This gentle pressure on the back of the head starts to calm and quiet. So viscerally, you might start to feel a sense of calm or settling. And we'll just pause here for another moment. And then go ahead and drop one hand to your heart, one hand to your belly. Still sitting up nice and tall. If you'd rather put your head down on your desk or your table or lean back in your seat, you can spend these last 2 minutes in any shape really that works best for you. Let your eyes close or just softly focus on one point. See if you can access or notice your breath again, just feeling the sensation of your breath coming in and out of the nose, or feeling your abdomen expand and contract. And as you just sit with your breath, I wanted to leave you with some words from a book. And again, I'll put this reference in the slides that you get after the fact. But this is from a book called Only Love Today by Rachel Macy Stafford. And she writes, "Bags under your eyes? No problem. Just rest them on a face that loves you. She doesn't see dark circles. She only notices the way they light up when her laugh comes straight from her belly. Pants too tight? No problem. Just allow your favorite pair of arms to enclose you. Those arms don't feel a size, they feel a home. Feeling less than shiny and put together? No problem. Let your hair down, turn up your favorite song. Your dancing partner doesn't see ugliness. He sees the life of his party. Feeling unlovable? No problem. Hold out your hands. This offering to give love is also an invitation to be loved. Love is how we roll. Go ahead and take a breath in. If your eyes were closed, let them flutter open. And I just wanted to leave you with that as a reminder that none of us are perfect. We're all stumbling through, this new time together. And we all have certainly our different struggles and successes. And so as you start to practice some of these tools with yourself and with your children or your family, know that really what matters the most in the offering is that offering of loving. doing it with love and the intention to receive love back. I hope this was useful to you. Thank you so much for being here. If you have any questions, you can email once we send the resources, and we will make sure to get back to you. All right, take care, everybody.